think of what words are in there before I say it myself. Or as I will more commonly refer to it, the IGBB. Today I'd like to talk about some of the things that are going on at the IGBB, give you a little brief history into the IGBB and how it was formed, and then go on to talk about my vision for the IGBB, the vision of the university for the IGBB, and how those have meshed together very nicely, and how we're moving forward. One thing that I will note is that there are so many things that have happened in the last year that there's no way that I can cover all of them today or really answer everything that questions people might have. After today's topic, and I've kind of come out and said, okay, this is my plan. The next thing is going to be coming around to departments and meeting with department heads, meeting with faculty, and talking about it in a little more detail and getting feedback on a lot of this stuff. Some of the stuff I presented to you today is pretty much, it's already been worked out, and some of it's new and kind of experimental. So anyway, I'll definitely want your feedback. The IGBB was really it's a new institute. It was started in 2011. In April 2011. It actually represents the merger of two pre-existing institutes, the Life Science and Biotechnology Institute and the Institute for Digital Biology. These were both fairly successful institutes, but opportunities arose. In particular, there was a major shift in the upper administration, and some of the institutional memory that prevented these two from merging in the past was gone. Dr. Bohach and Dr. Shaw were both open to the idea of making this university-wide institute that was truly university-wide, and that also was nestled within the auspices of the HPC squared, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So the LSBI, it started out in roughly about 2003, and it existed to about 2010. They started with about $2.5 million in seed funding. This pretty much kind of ran out around 2007 or so. The director at the start was Alan Wood. He retired in 2005. There was a period of about 2 years where there was no permanent director at the LSBI. Then in 2007, Shane Burgess was made the director. And Shane was given a tough task. He was given an institute that was on the verge of going under, and he needed to make it a viable entity. And I would say he did a very good job of it. There was greater than $4.5 million investment in equipment during that time, and more than $21 million in extramural funding came in from 2003 to 2010, most of that coming in from 2007 through 2010. The Institute was loved by some and hated by others, and I'll get into the details of that in a little bit. But it had its share of controversy. The IDB, the Institute for Digital Biology, on the other hand, was a very grassroots institute. It was started by faculty members, in particular Susan Bridges and Shane Burgess. I think Shane actually got the nod to be the LSBI director because it was work on the IDB, essentially putting a lot of work into that. It had a lot of faculty support, a large faculty base. Generally, with the exception of one person I know, it was universally beloved. But it had very little controversy associated with it. And that was in part because there was no money associated with it. Whenever you have no money, you have no controversy or very little thereof. So the IGBB came into being, like I said, in April of 2011. And it essentially merged these two institutes, and those two institutes then, their names were retired. One of the great things was that the IGBB was placed within the auspices of the High Performance Computing Collaboratory, HPC squared. That's right across the Highway 82 over in the industrial park. It's a supercomputing facility over there. It was really an honor and a privilege that the LSBI was allowed to and the IDB were merged in and put within this group. And that provided us with a lot of things that we didn't have before in terms of business staff, also computing staff, and then access to some of the most powerful supercomputers in Mississippi and sometimes the world, depending on the day of the week. One of the things about the HPC square, it's got several institutes associated with it. The supercomputers are kind of reserved for the use of the people that are affiliated with the institutes and are working with the institutes. Well, so the IGBB got off to a start in April, and then by July, the director was already gone. Dr. Burgess, as many of you know, became the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at the University of Arizona. And at that point, I was an associate director. Yogi Dandis, who's right here from Computer Sciences and Engineering, was another associate director. I was appointed the interim director. But at that point, the administration, mainly Dr. Shaw and Dr. Bohach, decided that it was time to kind of reevaluate things. The IGBB came about in kind of in a very tumultuous way in some ways, and as any new thing does. And the question was, how do we want to go forward, and what can we do that will best build relationships that will be good for the future? And so at that point, they put together a IGBB evaluation committee. This was led by Dr. Scott Willard. It also had Dr. Wes Berger of Memphis, Mark Lawrence, the CDM, Giselle Thibodeau, Steve Pruitt, and Dan Mullins. And these were the members of this committee. And they were given a very tough task in a very short turnaround time. But they were to evaluate the IGBB, where it stood, what its strengths and what its weaknesses were, and make some recommendations for the future. One of the first things they did is met with me to kind of hear out what my feelings were and my thoughts and opinions were. And they also met with groups of faculty, administrators, various employees, and then they put together a report. My discussion with the evaluation committee centered on the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, what did I think was good? What did I think was bad? And what was just plain ugly? And the good, there's a lot of good to focus on. If you look at the IGBB, and really you can't look at the IGBB without looking at its parent institutes, because the IGBB itself had only existed for a few months. But if you look at the LSBI and the IDB, they had a very good history of success. One of the examples, let's see, right here, this is just publication output per year of people affiliated with these institutes. And you see it starts off very low, but it just keeps on increasing. 2011, over 80 peer-reviewed publications. That's actually 2012 is probably going to be up here somewhere. In terms of growth, this red line here represents the number of employees. It started off we're starting off early in the 2007 fiscal year. But we started off with about 4 employees. We now have about 3 times that many. Actually, we're now, I did a count yesterday, it looks like we've got about 17 now. So we're going up about what's going on. So it's grown in size. One of the things I think that I'm very proud of is that one of the things that the LSBI IGBB group has really helped with is high impact publications. We have some of the highest impact publications coming out of the university. These are Nature, Science, Genome Research, PNAS papers that are coming out here, and that's very exciting. This little graph is one of those things that I love to show just because it shows the growth of interconnection of faculty. And each dot here represents a person that's a co-author on a publication. The line connecting two people is a shared publication. The thicker the line, the more shared publications they have. First part is 2002 through 2006. And for example, here I am up here, and I'm publishing with a lot of people, but nobody on campus. Or at least none of these major. I just listed a few of the people that have been heavily involved with the LSBI, IGBB groups. And I'm kind of a little island out here. There's some connection between McCarthy and Shane Burgess, and Dr. Burgess is involved a little bit. Dr. Lawrence has his little empire here and he's got a connection to bring you. But when you look at the difference in 2007 and 2011, there's just a tremendous amount more interconnection between people. And that is correlated with this rise in publication in both the number and in the quality of the publications coming out. The IGBB is, and its predecessors, a nonprofit. So we don't really make a profit per se, except we do bring in overhead. And we also bring in some money through service charges. We pretty much have to break even on that. But essentially, if you look at the overhead and the revenue generated, the revenue's gone up, really increased dramatically in 2010, 2011, a little drop. I'm not sure exactly what the 2012 values are. It also has a very strong tradition of promoting diversity. Now let's talk about the bad. And this is what a lot of people know the most about. The biggest bad that I would say that the LSBI in particular had was a poor relationship with some academic departments. And common department complaints were that the Institute was only available to a few, that there was an overemphasis on money, that the director and the staff were very aggressive, that the policies were overcomplicated, and there was some lack of clarity about the Institute's motives. And I would say all of these things are true, but I will couch that with the statement that the pressures that I am under as a director now are different than the pressures that Dr. Burgess was under when he was the director. And he was essentially told, you have to make this institute self-sustaining. So the focus was on bringing in money, overhead money, and so on. And so yes, was the director and the staff aggressive? They were. Did there seem to be an overemphasis on money? Well, pretty much they were told you have to make this place a self-sustaining entity. And so there was a huge emphasis on money because it meant people's jobs. Not sure of the Institute's motives, I'll get to. Policies overcomplicated, that's another thing that I think is very true. And again, some of these things were due to factors that were important at the time that may no longer be factors anymore. Institute only being available to a few, I'll get to that in a second. The major complaint that the centers and institutes, and I'll speak for all of them if I can, but essentially including the IGBB had, is that sometimes there was a feeling that faculty that worked with institutes were being penalized by the departments or colleges. And there was also the realization that faculty that are prevented from working with the institutes are often miss out on some of the competitive advantages they would have if they could work with the institutes. Regardless, no matter where blame is to be placed, a failure of these to rectify these relationships will lead to a loss of quality biomolecular and computational biology faculty. So it's really critical. If we want good faculty to stay here, we need to have a good relationship between the departments and between the institutes. The ugly part of this has been the fact that the IGBB in the LSBI and the IGB, but especially the LSBI and the IGBB, have suffered from an identity crisis. And this crisis, I would say, is that people don't know exactly what the mission of the Institute is or how it works. And the IGBB is admittedly a very new entity, but it pretty much carried a lot of the baggage that the LSBI had. And that's why this time to take a reflective look back and make the changes that needed to be made has been done. But one of the key matters of contention, and this is what I discussed in my discussion with the evaluation committee, was that the Institute was not really a core facility. The main reason it wasn't is that the personnel that were employed to work with researchers in the university were all paid out with soft money. And what this meant is that it was important for their jobs to essentially be working and have projects lined up. So what would happen is they would line up projects and collaborators to work with, and then their time would be all taken up. And if you, as somebody over in biology or fish and wildlife, wanted to come over and talk with them, they literally were working on other projects, and they didn't have anything in their time, the way they were scheduled, to actually sit down and talk with you. Now they did it oftentimes because they wanted to keep their work plate full. But one of the problems was that they would take on more projects than they could actually do. And so there was this, when I suddenly found myself with the keys to the car, so to speak, when Dr. Burgess left, there was a 3-year waiting list of projects going out on sequencing. And we managed to turn it around and get all those projects done in 3 months. But essentially, we had to change the way we thought about things and the way that the system was set up. Essentially, it was forcing everything through these research associates who were trying to take on everything and keep everything going because their job depended upon it, but also they had no room to really do what I see as the main mission of the IGBB, and that was to collaborate with people in different departments, in different across the state and other things, to really serve the university. I feel like the ability was very limited. And the other thing that kind of kept us from being, besides overcommitting and the way that the people were funded, was that we were one person deep on most of the services that people really wanted. And we also really couldn't be called a core facility because the equipment that we had, most of the equipment that had been purchased in the last 4 years, was purchased first from MRI awards and overhead and special contracts. So we weren't really a subsidized center so much as we were subsidized in the sense that MAFIS and CDM and others had invested tremendously in the building support and some of the salaries and so on, but we weren't the core facility. We generally had just one machine for each thing. But with that said, we did have a definite service center and specialized service center functions. What I argued at this meeting was that we needed some hard funding for some of these research associates so that they would have the time to actually meet with people and build new collaborations in addition to the collaborations that we already had going. And we have some great collaborators already, but we would like more. Of course, we were doing all this, all this talk about service. We were always a research institute first and foremost. So anyway, the identity problem was a problem to say the least. The conclusions of the IGBB evaluation committee, there was a number of them. One of them was that the IGBB service agreements, essentially where people paid us for just to do work, not necessarily through a grant. These were too complicated and cumbersome, involved too many signatures. The way that money flowed was bizarre. They were essentially treated as little sub-awards, and the overhead flowed with them in strange ways. It was complicated and confusing. Another thing that was, they did think that the overhead policy that was in place was very good and quite fair. This was a policy that went into effect shortly before the IGBB, right as it was becoming an institute. Some of you may not be aware of the details of this policy, but this was drafted after a lot of consideration and thought. And a lot of the people that were most afraid of this policy when they got to understand it had become its biggest supporters. So that was a very good thing. But there was an agreement that hard funding was necessary to help the IGBB actually complete its mission of also serving and also growing collaborations. There's also the opinion that the director needed to answer to someone other than the vice president, meaning vice president for research and the vice president for the division of agriculture, forestry, and veterinary medicine. And this was clear because, with no one in between, too much of the vice president's time was taken up listening to the director of the LSBI or IGBB. And one of the thoughts that made quite a bit of sense to everybody, including myself, was that those colleges and divisions and research entities that were really supporting the Institute needed to have some say, and it made a lot more sense to have the director answer to someone other than the vice presidents. So I'll talk about that and how that works here in a second. The next thing, and a very difficult thing, was handed essentially to Wes Berger and Mark Lawrence, was to come up with a way to make this plan work. Adopt as many of the things that the committee put forward as possible, with the realization that there was limited money and limited resources. And so they worked very hard at that. Essentially, this was done back in August of 2011. The work that Dr. Lawrence and Dr. Berger did continued on and off throughout that time, and eventually in May of 2002, I was named director. And a lot of these ideas and things had come to fruition, and right now I'll talk about that a little bit. MAPHIS and CDM have agreed to provide additional hard funding to the IGBB. This funding is to be used to pay for 3 IGB research consultants. These are truly research associates, but I call them research consultants because that's in the function of the model that I'm going to discuss. They are consultants, and what they provided was 50% hard funding for 3 different research associates. One that would be in work in genomics, including all the DNA sequencing, RNA, seq, all that kind of stuff. One that would be specialized in proteomics, and one that would be involved in the computational data analysis. All of them would be involved in data analysis to some degree, but one would be more computational. The other thing that was actually quite unexpected and just a very nice surprise to me was they also recommended that there be 3 IGBB faculty consultants. These would be faculty that that CDM and MAPHIS would pay 3 months of their salary every year to essentially work with the research consultants, the research associates, and the director and the other staff, in meeting with people, discussing projects, and help develop projects. So this would be, rather than just a technical, it would be a step back, big picture thing that would kind of help move these projects along and help build collaborations. ORED, the Office of Research and Economic Development, continues its support through the HPC Squared, and this is vital because the fact that we don't have to have our own unique accounting team, don't have to have all those things in place. We don't have to do all that. The travel and stuff that HPC Squared is doing that for us through ORED funds, that's tremendous. And then there was funding from MAFIS, CDN, and ORED that helped pay for the director's positions and so on. So this has been a real team effort. The new administrative hierarchy, I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, simply because I don't have any way of displaying things in 4 or 5 dimensions very well. It's pretty complicated, but I answer to a lot of people, but primarily as the people that I will answer to most directly, and this is off the website, and you'll see at the bottom here a list of those those entities that I answer to. First one, MAFIS and CDM, who provided a lot of money to, well, the money to support these research associates, part of my salary, part of the salaries for some of the accounting and other staff. Also the Office of Research, so I also answer to the Office of Research. Here I answer through the deans and the director of MAFIS. So this is Dr. Hopper here. Right here, I mainly will probably answer to Ray Vaughn, the Associate Vice President. Of course, Dr. Bohach and Dr. Shaw are ultimately up the line somewhere, but the whole division, DAFEM. And then, of course, as being part of HPC Squared, it's important that I have everything tuned with them as well. So now I'm going to, I've talked a little bit about the history of where things have gone, and now I'm going to talk about my vision for the Institute. And those of you that know me, that have spent any time with me, that have seen me wearing my hearing aids or taking out my batteries, I know that you hope that my vision is better than my hearing. Okay, I think that one of the things that's important is that we define this institute. I told you we had an identity crisis. We've had an identity crisis. People have thought we were one thing and called up and said, why aren't you doing this? And we go, we're not supposed to do that. And then we end up doing it nonetheless, or something else. You know, so there's been wishy-washiness everywhere. One of the things that's real clear to me is that we need to create an identity for this institute where we spell out what we do and how we do it and how we interact with people and make it as transparent as possible. And I would say pretty much everybody has agreed that the IGBB is a research institute first and foremost. Really what our primary mission is to create collaborations, write proposals, submit grant proposals, bring in money for the university that supports biomolecular and computational biology research. And our primary thing that we have to offer is the expertise of our personnel. This has always been the case, but it's going to be even more so, I think, in the future. The technology, the machines, they're nice, they're useful, but they also can be kind of like the albatross around your neck. We're going to continue investing in the machines, of course, but really a lot of the work you can have done elsewhere, or we can do it here, and we can do it more as service work. But the focus on data analysis, working with people and building collaborations, giving them capabilities that they wouldn't have elsewise, that's really the focus of the IGBB. We are still not a core facility, but that doesn't mean we can't do a good job of providing services, a select number of services, in a very timely and courteous manner. And so we do have service functions, and we're going to continue. And again, here, I'd like to just define things very clearly and make it easy for people to work with us either in the proposal area or just as a service facility. I'm not going to be afraid of the word service facility anymore. I'm going to embrace that because I think that we need to define it. As long as everything's clearly defined, I think we can move forward and in a good way. One thing that I think is really clear is that we need to be a kinder, gentler institute, a little more sensitive to the departments and what's going on in the departments. I think we've made great strides in that area. I think that will even be more so, and that's one of the things that when I come to talk to the departments, I would like to get across. Everything that I've been told, everything that's been put forward is that this institute, one thing that's important, I guess, is because of the money put forward by NAFIS and by CBM and by ORED, we now are in a position where we are partly subsidized. And we've been told, I have been told, it's not all about the money now, okay? Now, a lot of it is about service and collaboration. That's not to say money's not important. I mean, we're going to be, like I said, first and foremost a research institute bringing in extramural dollars. But when it comes to a lot of these other things, let's work on making this institute something that's a pleasure to work with, that people want to work with. Because ultimately, if they find it easy to work with you, straightforward to work with you on just service stuff, then they're much more likely to think about collaborating with you. So synergistic communication, synergistic collaborations, I think that's really what all research institutes are out to do, is to help the departments and help the faculty do things that they couldn't do otherwise. And now we've got a huge supercomputer standing behind us, We've got the equipment in the Pace building and elsewhere standing behind us, and we're going to have a much slicker, nicer, easier system to work with that's going to allow us to help build more synergistic relationships. And here I would just say, okay, I just pretty much said that. But one of the things that will be important in this is better data tracking, and also something that people have been asking for years is a cafeteria-style menu. So those services that we do successfully and commonly will be put on essentially a web menu. And you can order them like you're going to Amazon.com and you're ordering them. Now, it won't be quite the same in that you don't just pay with a form with your credit card right there. But the idea will be pretty much the same. Essentially, you'll submit the order, and I'll go through the whole rigmarole behind that in just a second. The prices will be all-inclusive. You won't be paying somebody's salary for doing this little part of this, and essentially we'll say, okay, here's the services we offer. These are the prices that they cost. We'll can sit down and show you the price calculations. They're break-even cost calculations, okay? So we're not making money on doing a service center. But what we want to do is have it where it's very simple to use. We will not charge users for machine depreciation. There was some work done where we were essentially, I guess Dr. Burgess was essentially put into a position where he felt like he needed to include the depreciation and made some equipment just unusable. Things that didn't get used at all cost like $10,000 to use for an hour or something like that. That was, of course, everybody agreed that it was ludicrous. And internal users, those that are people at MSU, will not be paying for machine depreciation. You won't be paying for the research consultants' time. 50% of it, anyway, that's paid for on the hard funding. And a good thing also is that users will have a way of tracking the progress of their projects. And they will be updated as periodically through the system. It will have something, I'm just calling it my IGB, but I don't know what it'll be be called. But essentially, it'll have two parts that I can think of, and there may be more parts. This is not all that sophisticated. I mean, this is just like what a lot of businesses do, and a lot of institutes on campus are already doing it. But it will involve, we'll have a help desk ticket system, and this way we can track what people have requested. Everything will be given a tracking number, and we'll track it through from the time it comes in to the time the help desk ticket is closed. The help desk ticket would be used to ask a question, report a problem, request a meeting with an IGBB research consultant. If you need a formal quote for something, you can provide that then. If you want to request use of, say, the PACE building or a meeting room at HPC Square, this would also be the place to submit that ticket. Then there will also be an ordering system. And this is where you can browse our cafeteria list of services and look at the prices. You can obtain an informal quote. I say informal because we have to make sure that we have people to commit to services and doing them in a timely fashion. But essentially, you can find out what the price will be, regardless. You can place a service request for the most popular genomic, proteomic, and computational services, and you can reserve equipment that you want to use on a fee-per-use basis. And again, all this equipment use will be cafeteria style as well. Okay? And then track the status of your order. And you'll have a login, password, just like you were shopping somewhere else. Just with the help desk ticket, this is just kind of a generic help desk ticket look, but essentially you would submit your help desk ticket, and it will go to the individual who will answer your address your problems or your concerns or your questions. The ordering system will probably be broken up into different disciplines. And let's say we want to do some DNA sequencing. One of the things that we're bringing online is a Illumina MySeq. We have one that we just obtained. We have another that we're trying to get here for campus. But there would be the option of MySeq services and so on. And it will give essentially the different types of sequencing that we do, and the prices, and the catalog number for those prices. And I will point out that there are literally hundreds of different options that you could pick out for ways of sequencing things. And we can't offer all of those. We can't offer those that are the most common. Now, that doesn't mean we can't do the others. What it means is that through a cafeteria style list, we can only do those ones that are fairly straight, ones that are commonly requested. There is another way to deal with the others, and we'll talk about that. But let's say you want to do variant sequencing 2x150. Okay, here's your little page that shows this. You can add it to your shopping cart or whatever. This would tell what it includes, what the guarantees are, and we'll have guarantees of on certain things. But we have to do like every business or everybody out there. If you just bring us some DNA and you say this is ready to sequence, if the library wasn't prepared by us or one of our partner organizations, we can't really guarantee anything out of it. And so we'll have to tell you that. But if it is prepared, we can guarantee a certain number of bases. And these are numbers that I've made up here, so don't be writing these down. This also will tell about the data, how it will be provided, and also through my IGBB is where you would actually be able to download your data. After you've ordered what you want, the services that you want, you'd have this checkout cart. Now you can change the things. If you'd like to submit this as a request, you can, and you can put in the notes and what you'd like to do. If you just want to see what the price is, you're welcome to do that as well, and then you just cancel out of this. But if you submitted it, you get this little screen that just tells you, thank you, your request has been sent to the IGBB help desk. You'll receive an automatic email, and this will tell you the number, account number. And pretty much, at least at first, with most of you, you'll probably have the IGBB research consultant contact you within 72 hours. And that's mainly because even if they need to make sure that they're doing what you really want. And what I would say is that you may find it easier to work through a different way, and I will explain that as well. But so if you were ordering from the cafeteria, essentially the way that the workflow goes is you place the order versus via the web-based system. It would be fielded by the research, IGBB research consultant, and some of the things that you put in there would, whatever what you place your order for would direct it to a particular research consultant. They would then send your department an invoice for 50% of the work. This is very different. This is very different than the interdepartmental agreement type system where you sign a piece of paper, I sign it, send it to your department head, they sign it, and all this stuff goes around. And then with that system that was in place, there was also overhead associated with it. There's no overhead associated with this, okay? This is just a simple service procedure. So essentially, your department would be billed. They would say what account, you would say what account you want it billed out of. You get the first 50%, and then you proceed to do the work. One of the things that's very, very important, and has been a big, important thing in how we got rid of that 3-year backload of projects, is that we've had our own instrumentation, but we also have partner organizations. These are organizations that provide these services, similar services to what we provide, and can provide. And a lot of these, for example, for making DNA libraries, genomic libraries, for sequencing, that was the major holdback. We had that 3-year waiting period on getting those done. Well, there's a company in Missouri that does this, and does it for a very reasonable price if we work with them and send all of our work to them. And we tested out several companies that could not really do the job, and we found one that could. And right now we're sending our libraries there. And actually it's less expensive than it was if we did it here. In other cases, the services, we've got services that we can do cheaper here, but what I want to have, and what's going to be vital, is that when this work comes into this research consultant, that they have the ability to say, okay, well, our master spec is backed up for the next 5 months on projects that are coming in. I'm going to make a phone call to my friend at Kansas State that does this. And of course, these would be a limited number of different groups that we work with. But the idea is, at this point, what's important to us is not holding up the flow of research. I feel like that's been a big problem in the past, is that we've slowed things down. We don't want to slow things down. What we want to do is facilitate the process for you. And if that means sending it somewhere else, that means sending it somewhere else. But essentially, we'll work with these partner organizations to keep prices as low as we can. We'll do what we can here at the OBL, the Omics Biology Lab, which is essentially just part of the IGBB with the equipment in it. Or we'll work with a partner. Once we finish the job, essentially the deliverables will be presented to the PI, and the rest of the charges will be built in the department. And once that's all finished, the help desk ticket will be closed. And the advantages of this, first of all, if you order through this cafeteria system, we're not going to ask you for co-authorship on anything. This is a service. We don't expect it, we won't request it. Now, you may find that somebody does extraordinary work and goes out of their way to help you, and you may feel it worth that, but we're not going to expect that at all. And the other thing is that the IGBB research consultant has the flexibility to get the work done in the most efficient, cost-effective way possible. The cost is be the same whether we go through the OBL or the partner organization. So this means we're going to have to work very closely with partner organizations to try to get the best prices. And if a partner organization can just do it cheaper than we can do it, flat out, we'll probably go with the partner organization. We will probably let you know what we do. But the other thing is that there'll be a time. We'll say, okay, these services, we can do this in 90 days. You know, we'll have a time that was simply listed in the catalog, which would be good. In terms of data analysis, we will only offer just the simplest of our data analysis items in the cafeteria. Things like cleaning up sequence files or doing that stuff, because that's where we start getting things get a little more complicated. We're going to have the right to pass on projects if we just don't have the capacity, people in place, and other things to do. But what this IRC person will be doing is looking at all the options, and if we have no options open, they'll just have to tell you, but we'll try to help you as much as we can. Now, I've talked a lot about the service. I'm going to talk about what happens when you want something that's a little bit off the service menu. What if you want a special dish? Well, what would happen here was the PI would submit a help desk ticket requesting to meet and discuss a potential project. This would be fielded by one of the IRCs, and they would be at the help desk, and they would contact the PI and set up a meeting. In this case, and this should be IRC, we'd set up a meeting with the PI and the IGBB faculty consultant. So this is where the faculty consultants come in. And you would have a meeting, you would talk about this project, what you want done, and how you might go about doing it. At that point, there's 4 different outcomes. One could be an alternative path. In this case, it would be, well, we actually don't know how to do that, or we don't do that here, or you might want to go down the road to, University of Illinois and look at their stuff, because we just, we don't have that expertise. The other thing is, it may be that the cafeteria order system is the one that works for you. And I think a lot of people will probably work best if they submit a help test ticket, do the talking before they order stuff through the cafeteria, because they may not know exactly what kind of reads, sequence reads, or what kind of mass spec analysis they need. And this would be the time to do that. One of the things about this is because these are subsidized positions, these people can now talk with you, okay? They can now meet with you and really spend the time talking with you, even if you don't have money up front. Because that was the thing in the past. You pretty much, if you didn't have the money, we couldn't talk to you. That's different. It's different now. The other thing that might be decided is the PI may have some funds and they want to do a collaborative agreement. This would be like the interdepartmental agreements in place now, except there would not be, it would essentially be just an agreement saying we will do X and this is how much it will cost. If we can use things out of the cafeteria menu, we will. If we have to use other things, the pricing will also be the prices, the new pricing system based on the new price list that we're developing. But that would essentially be provided to you in the quote. Well, I think one of the best outputs would be is if you go, wow, this would make a great grant proposal, and work with the PI to help develop a grant proposal, or say, I think the faculty consultant and the IGBB research consultant, along with the director and other people, can put their input and say, okay, this might be a good thing to involve somebody in agriculture and biological engineering, or someone over here. I know this person that does this. Let's get them and talk to them and build a collaboration, write a proposal, submit the proposal, help the desk take it closed. Collaborative agreement just built to the department. The cafeteria completed the order. In this system, the co-authorship by the IGB personnel is expected if you're going the grant proposal route or the scientific collaborative agreement. This is work that requires more than just putting things through the machine or a skill set that's defined. This is really the thinking part of it. It's not expected if you do the cafeteria order system or doing some alternative path, but the advice here is going to be provided by us. It involves cost risk sharing on both sides. The fact that you've moved off the menu and you're working with other things means that there's risk. Okay, so there's going to be, the risk has got to be shared. Submitting grants, we've got to finish up here really quick, but already grants can be submitted through the IGBB. This is very important to us. But one thing that I also will note is you don't have to submit a grant through IGBB to work with IGBB. You can submit your grant through your department and have IGBB as a child account in that grant. Or you can submit it through the IGBB and have your department as a child account. I'm not going to get into the overhead distribution system and all that today, but I would like to talk with you at the department and meetings and so on. But it's worked very well. We have had no complaints really that I know of from the departments with the way this has worked, and that's really because the indirect costs follow the direct costs. So if we do 40% of the work over at the IGBB and you have 60% that falls in your department, that 60% of the overhead that's associated with your department goes to your department and is distributed according to whatever policies that your department is under. Our part of the overhead goes with us, and it's distributed based upon the policies that apply to the IGBB. One of the things that's important, though, is if we use the high-performance computing collaboratory computers, which would be within the data analysis stuff, there is a retainage that would be taken on both the department and the child account grants. If it ends up that it's just the IGBB using it, I think that, and you're not using any of the computers, then it's probably just IGBB that will pay the retainage. But it's usually a combination of both. But that's what helps keep these supercomputers available to everybody. One of the things that has been requested by several people is, can't you just put all of the IGBB stuff on the grant proposal in the contractual line and just have provided, like a service quote and just put it in the service line. This is something that, or in the contractual line. This is something that I'm open to, but I need to work out some of the details with SPA, and I'm going to set up a meeting with Richard Swan and so on to talk about it. The main thing is that usually when someone submits a grant through the IGBB, one of the IGBB faculty is a co-PI on that grant. And so there's some implications on how that would work with their time and so on, and I just need to look into it. But I'm amenable to that idea. And so I'm looking into that. Finally, one of the things that's really key to me is building an atmosphere that was more like the IDB, where we really had an organization where people could come together and use it as a think tank. And what I would like to do and what I plan to do is invite anyone who's interested on the faculty and students and postdocs and so on to become an affiliate of IGBB. Affiliation with IGBB is completely free. There's no strings attached. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to submit a proposal to us. You don't have to do anything. But what that will allow you to do is, I'm working to establish a seminar series, kind of picking up with the digital biology learning community and have it be kind of a part of the things that the IGBB does. So you would be invited to these, you would be able to give talks and so on at those. You can request, to use rooms, you'll be on the mailing list, news announcements and stuff on the IGBB website. In terms of the supercomputer use, it's pretty much limited to those people that are working on projects associated with one of the research institutes. But one of the things that we've done, and we will continue to do, is we offer it as part of startup packages in departments. We also use it in the sense that if someone is working on something, like doing some research, and they say, listen, we really want to collaborate with you, we want to get some preliminary data. This proposal, I'm pretty amenable to that. Of course, I hold you to it as well. A few people who have had a history of really working with the IGBB, submitting proposals through us or submitting them with, through their departments in collaboration with us. These are, we'll name a few people that will be IGBB fellows. And these people will have access to the supercomputers. They will have, if they want offices over at HPC Squared, assuming those are available, they'll have that option. And the first to the trophy sake is another thing. Is when somebody that's put grants through us and brought in overhead, the IGBB contacts me and wants something, I jump, because I want to please them most of all, because they're the people that have been investing in us. So I want to outreach to everybody and say, you don't have to follow the system, and when it comes to proposals, you can submit them in the way that you need to submit them, and that's best for you. But those that really make an effort to work with us will gain the most and will benefit the most, I think, and because they benefit us the most. So essentially, one of the last things I'd like to just say is that all that I've talked about here, it's not all in place at this point. We do have the position announcements for the research consultants. Those are currently on the HRM website. If you have people in mind that you think would be good for the positions, or if you're looking for a position, they're opened up for anyone that's got a bachelor's, master's, or PhD, or equivalent up there. So there's a wide range that we're looking at in people, but what we want is the best people. People that can work with other people, people that are good at thinking, collaborating and making deals, but also very organized and can deal with multiple projects. But this will take a while. A lot of it is meeting with people and making sure what I'm doing is legal, or what I'm doing is fair and proper. And but like I said, this is my baby, so I'm working on this all the time. And I'd just like to thank you, first of all, for coming here today. I'd like to thank Dr. Hopper, who's just been fantastic during this whole process. I'd really like to thank Westberger and Lawrence Sleepin, the two people that I've contacted the most to say, can we do this, can we do this? And they said, well, let's talk about it. And we talked about it and worked through a lot of things. They also really were instrumental in setting up the, moving this forward. And they've been working very hard on it. Dr. Bohach and Dr. Shaw, I'd like to thank them. They've both been wonderful and very supportive. And I'd like to thank them and the rest for just taking the time and saying, let's do it right. Let's oh, well, anyway. Here's like a fast version of this. So they were very key in saying, let's take the time. I know that hasn't always been the easiest thing, because we haven't moved as fast as some people would like, but I think that there has been a real decision to take things deliberately and make the best decisions we can. That doesn't mean we're not going to have to adjust, but it means that we are trying to do things right and do right by you. I'd like to thank the evaluation committee. They did an excellent job and it's been very helpful. The folks at the HPC Squared have been fabulous. It's been a pleasure working with them. I'd like to thank my department head in Plant and Soil Science, Dr. Phillips, and the people at Plant and Soil Sciences. They've been supportive, and also they pretty much had one of their faculty members just kind of plucked away from them. And that's not always easy, but Dr. Phillips has been very, very supportive and very nice. And I noticed that the IGBB is featured on the PS Plant Soil Science website, and that makes me very happy. And then I'd like to thank the folks at the IGBB. a tremendous group of people to work with, and I'm very proud to be working with them. At this point, I'd like to open it up for questions or comments.
It has shown as a model where your research consultants are key people to pass on your vision to end users like me or anyone else who's not used it in the past. So do you have plans of getting feedback from people as you hire these important positions?
I think that is in the plan. Essentially, before I make decisions on hiring, I'm going to be contacting those people that work with us at the IGBB, and you're one of those people. And just talking about some of the applicants, as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, it's like all of us want, not the director, it's your job. You don't want to tell you how to do it till we get it. I mean, that's one thing I thought was critical, that you're building bridges with everyone.
These research consultants, let's say, are going to have to be people that have a lot of skills. And primarily people skills is going to be very important. They have to be technically proficient as well, understand the science. They will be working in the lab, running the stuff, the equipment, and so on as well. But I think that ultimately a lot of those things will probably fall to people under their direction. In short, what I really want is people that are good collaborators and who are good at saying, okay, I see what your problem is. This is the way that we, and based on my understanding, okay, you really needs to do some RNA-seq work. And this is they're going to have to keep up on the newest in the technologies, and I know that's hard. But
do you have any mechanism where there's something available to you as a director to let some of these, either it's a faculty consultant or a research consultant, and obviously they're not going to spend all their time there, but a bit of keeping up with the technology.
Oh, keeping up with the technology?
Yeah. Because we are relying on them to guide us, right? That's so much of what we do.
Well, one of the things I would say is, for example, when it came to working with making DNA libraries, we found some people that could do the work but didn't do it very well. When we found someone that looked like they were legitimate, I sent Kurt Shoemaker, I sent him out to work with him. And then when we've done things like sequencing, new sequencing apparatus, my people are always at the meetings where they have to do it right there. We've also been sending people to workshops and training sessions. I think we're sending almost everybody at some point to training sessions. With regard to the genomics and the computational aspects and the proteomics, there is a need for keeping updated. And that doesn't mean we'll always have all the equipment here. But one of the things we need to be aware of is that in a lot of cases, we can make the deals to get things done even if we don't have the equipment. And that I think is an important aspect. If you understand the technology, you can go, okay, well, we don't have this machine, but let's set up a connection. Let's set up something with some group that we trust. That can be that way.
My question is actually what you're starting to touch on is, this moves just, the equipment moves just as fast as we get one up. We're looking at another better way to do it. And while I see what you're saying, that we can always outsource, there will be always a need to upgrade the equipment so that we can still have a niche. And so in this grander plan, where there's been money allocated for, because that's part of the previous challenge, where there's been money allocated to help, hard money to help with, what's the vision there about how you're going to stay?
Well,
you don't know what it is you need, but you're going to need something.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that's something that I feel quite lucky with at this point, is that one of the things that in making us a kind of gentler institute that doesn't charge for depreciation. Essentially, make the CDM and said, if you need this equipment, come to us and we'll talk about it. They've been, essentially, the concept is, let's not be cutthroat out there. Let's work well with people. We're going to help you with that. Now that doesn't mean they'll buy everything, but at the same time, the more overhead, the more things that we bring in proposals. That's good. The other thing is, we've got MRI proposals that we brought equipment in past years, and we'll continue that route as well. But yes, in terms of equipment, we do have ways of trying to keep on top of things. And what's actually I think is going to happen eventually is that, with, for example, DNA sequencing, I don't think it'll be long before all of us will be carrying our DNA sequencers as an app on our iPhone, something like that. Well, maybe 2 or 3 years. But I mean, I think that a lot of it's going to become simple enough that it'll be like PCR. We used to have one PCR machine in a big core facility on campus, and then pretty soon everyone could afford one. Well, I think that, and I think that's part of the overall vision for the IGBB, is that if you get too caught up in the technology of just running the machines, you're going to suffer, because they do change so quickly. But what doesn't change is the fact that now we're producing tremendous amounts of data that we have to analyze. That is something, and a lot of that data, the supercomputing facility, being involved with HPC Squared, has allowed us to explore things and to go ways that we haven't been able to do in the past. And I'm really excited about that. Is the increased ability to really try to drive biological molecule data. Running the machines, to me, is not all that exciting. It's something that we need to do, and I think it's good to have here for both educational, research, and other purposes. But to me, the next frontier is, how do you deal with all this data? How do you make biological sense of it? And how do you help people make biological sense out of it that aren't computer scientists, that aren't genomicists, if that's a word, or aren't specialized in this field? What do you do when someone comes to you and says, I've been told that the reviewers of my grant have told me that I really need to add some proteomics stuff to it. I don't know what to do. This is something that I feel like we have the ability, are going to have the ability shortly, to do that we weren't really able to do in the past. Other questions? Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for coming.